Well, it's official. Kari Lake has lost her bid for governor in the state of Arizona. And the new governor will be Democrat Katie Hobbs, who's the current Secretary of State. Now, Lake is handling it real well, tweeting this: Arizonans know BS when they see it. They sure do.
That's why you lost.
They sure do.
Anna, can I do it?
Yeah.
Everybody wants it.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Yeah. Down goes Kari Lake. Down goes Kari Lake. Down goes Kari Lake. And the reason why that's so important is not just because of Kari Lake, but because of what she represents. She represents the crazies, the election deniers, the irrational, the Trump acolytes, and they have now almost all been defeated. She was the last one standing, and she stands no more. We'll give you more details.
Yes, I have a lot more details, but before we get to them, there's something that's been on my mind and I have to get it out. You guys know me. If I'm thinking about something, I have to share it with you. I think about the panic that I personally felt in the months before the 2020 presidential election with Louis DeJoy, a Trump lackey in charge of the post office during an election cycle where an increasing number of Americans were expecting to vote by mail because of this ongoing pandemic, right? And it worked out. It ended up being totally fine. Louis DeJoy is still in charge of the post office, which blows my mind, but that's just the fact of the matter. Then I think about all of the panic we all felt in regard to these Trump candidates, these Trump election deniers. And it turns out that the American people are far more rational than honestly I gave them credit for. And so maybe things just work out.
Yeah, no, okay.
I don't know.
We've got a hilarious role reversal here.
No, I know, but like the reason why I say that is because we also have to acknowledge that we exist in a media bubble where panic sells. And sometimes I'm worried that we buy into that panic too much.
Nope, not at all.
Okay.
We're the most rational actors, the fairest show in America. And no,
we're humans who make human mistakes.
Yeah, no, never made one.
Okay.
No, listen, guys. Of course, when we make mistakes, we own up to it, etc. And in fact, I give the Democrats a lot of credit. But apparently, the focus on democracy and abortion largely worked. The pivot to Social Security at the end worked. Give them student debt relief definitely worked. That was showed in the exit polling, and it drove out a lot of younger voters, etc. So credit where credit is due. But here, I'm being the one that's a little skeptical. Why? Kari Lake barely lost.
Yeah, it's true.
She lost by like 3 votes, I'm exaggerating, but not by much, after a week of counting. So it's not like we crushed them. We barely won in Arizona with Kari Lake being a total and utter clown, a buffoon of epic proportions. And you beat her by like 7 votes, and we're all going crazy as if the Democrats are kings of the world. They're not. They're not. So they're about to make a giant mistake, which happens all the time after a big victory. So yes, this victory was. Like they lost the House, let's also keep that in mind. And at this point, they're either gonna have a 50-50 Senate or they're gonna pick up 1 seat. That's what all this giant celebration is over. The reality is the celebration is over the Trump insanity losing, right? Now, don't get it twisted. It doesn't mean the Democrats are on a perfect track.
No, they're not.
No, look, the Democrats are on such a bad track that they barely beat lunatics.
No, but I think you're misunderstanding what I'm saying. All of the criticisms you have for the Democratic Party, I share. I agree with those criticisms, and I think that it would be a huge mistake for Democrats to think to learn all the wrong lessons from this midterm election cycle.
Which they definitely will.
Which absolutely, right? So the incredibly risky tactic of propping up the Trump lackeys and the extreme right, they're gonna continue doing that, and I think that they're playing with fire, and they shouldn't do that. But nonetheless, putting that aside, just in regard to the American electorate, where they're at when it comes to these lunatic Trump candidates, no, we should have more faith in them because they did turn these candidates down. That's what I'm referring to, right?
Yeah,
I think we just kind of got sucked into this news cycle of constantly hearing about, the percentage of Trump voters in the Republican electorate who do back the lunatics, right? But they're not the majority of the Republican Party.
No, they're definitely the majority. No. Again, don't get it twisted. The Trump lunatics are definitely the majority of the Republican Party. And I wish it weren't the case. But I'm thrilled that there is a minority within the Republican Party that thinks it's a bridge too far. Remember, look, the best example is Georgia, where the Trump crazy Herschel Walker gets 8.5% less than Brian Kemp, who's a very right-wing Republican, but not insane, right? So we don't like Kemp. Kemp's terrible in 1,000 ways, but he doesn't think that if you lose an election, that means you actually won, right? So that's an 8.5 point difference, but that's an 8.5 point difference for the whole state of Georgia, not within the Republican Party. So within the Republican Party, that percentage is even smaller. So yes, it's true that we only need a tiny percentage of Republicans to flip or to not vote to get to sanity in the country, for the whole country, right? But that's still a tiny percentage. So it's not like, oh my God, the Republicans are awesome. No, they're generally speaking still awful. And an overwhelming majority of them still believe in Trump and that the election was stolen, and all those polls are not at all wrong, right? But again, don't get me wrong, the fact that that 8.5% exists and that it swings elections is monumentally important, and that's why we're all breathing a sigh of relief here as Kari Lake loses, as so many of these other crazy people lost. And remember, Herschel Walker hasn't even lost. Herschel Walker's totally nuts, and he has not lost yet in Georgia. They're going to go to a runoff. But yes, especially given the Republican establishment reaction, and most importantly, forget their establishment, the Republican media reaction, the fact that they're saying, okay, we lost, and we're, no matter if it's 7.5, 8.5, or 9.5, we're not going to win these elections if we run lunatics because we're losing the middle too much. Great, that's great news. So, but it comes with another asterisk. That means the Republicans are going to pivot, likely. But when they do, the Democrats will likely stay where they are because that's what they always do.
Yes.
Then the Republicans will have a huge advantage because it's not like Brian Kemp and Ron DeSantis and Greg Abbott lost. They all won, and they all won easily.
Yes. Yeah, and all right, fine, Cenk, fine. All right, I won't be positive ever.
Sorry.
Okay?
I mean, we had a positive Anna for a minute, and I ruined it.
No, but like, also, I'm making the mistake of failing to juxtapose the Republican primaries to the actual general elections, right? And that served as a big challenge for the Trump candidates because while they handily won primary races up against other quote unquote normal Republican candidates, they had difficulty in the general. So really what makes the difference are those moderate voters or independent voters. And so your point about the Republican electorate stands, and I will accept it.
Oh,
okay?
geez, she not merciful. Fairest show in America, we just told you.
And there is a disconnect between what makes up the Republican establishment, meaning the political leaders and the politicians, and then the actual Republican electorate. I think that disconnect exists, and we'll see how that plays out in coming elections. But I do want to go to a Liz Cheney angle to this whole Kari Lake update, because while I certainly have no love for Liz Cheney, she engaged in some choice trolling that I am in favor of. So first I gotta give you some context. In late October, Liz Cheney put out a pretty vicious political ad against Kari Lake, and we have that snippet for you right now. Let's take a look.
I don't know that I have ever voted for a Democrat, but if I lived in Arizona, I absolutely would. You have a candidate for governor, Kari Lake. You have a candidate for Secretary of State, Mark Fincham, both of whom have said that they will only honor the results of an election if they agree with it. And if you care about the survival of our republic, we cannot give people power who will not honor elections. We must have elected officials who honor that responsibility.
So Kari Lake saw that vicious political ad targeted toward her and Fincham, and she didn't like it, but she put out a very sarcastic thank you on Twitter, along with a statement directed at Liz Cheney. Now, here's the tweet in question. She tweeted this out, I believe, on October 28th. And in the statement, she writes, "Your recent television ad urging Arizonans not to vote for me is doing just the opposite. Our campaign donations are skyrocketing and our website nearly crashed from traffic as people rush to learn more about my plan to put Arizona first and join our historic political movement." I'm sure that's exactly what happened, Kari. Well, Liz Cheney never responded to that until Kari Lake's defeat was announced, and she quote tweeted it with, "You're welcome, Kari Lake." And I just enjoyed that.
Yeah, she's like, "Oh, thank you for helping my campaign." And she's like, "You're welcome." So, look, did Liz Cheney make the difference? I don't know, maybe. Remember, it's that elusive middle that apparently exists, as we found out in these midterm elections, that are deciding these very, very close elections. So every little bit helped. And so I'm glad that Liz Cheney came in and peeled off a couple of Republican voters. I'm sure it did help Kari Lake's fundraising, because that's when you go, oh my God, they're attacking me, and the Republicans now hate Liz Cheney, et cetera. So it was a little bit of both. And I certainly wouldn't give most of the credit to Liz Cheney, but she did her part, and God bless on that part. It doesn't mean any of her policies are correct, but the fact that a couple of Republicans were brave enough to turn on Trump and to back reality and democracy before it was cool to do that, is important, and you should give people like Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger a lot of credit for, and Justin Amash, who everybody's forgotten about because it was a cycle ago.
Give them credit for doing the bare minimum.
Yeah,
that's what I think.
Which makes them 200 times better than all of these phonies that you're seeing on TV today going, oh, we got to turn away from Trump. They weren't saying that just a week ago. They were all up Trump's ass a week ago. So I know it's damning with faint praise and it's a low bar, but they cleared it and none of the other Republicans did.
That's correct.